All right, guys, TacticalRab back again today. Hope you're all doing well and enjoying your day so far. And welcome to episode 12 of the Breaking Point podcast. Back again after another phenomenal week of matches. The group play for stage 2 is over. The seedings are set for the major. So many phenomenal storylines to talk through this week. The matches were phenomenal. There was some drama, well, mingled in, I suppose, throughout all of it regardless. Joined today by EasyMac, no Lionman today, but still plenty to discuss. How you doing, Austin? Really interesting week for your team, first of all. The fact that, had the first loss, of course, and then bounced back in pretty spectacular fashion against London and still lock in the number one seed, which of course is the all-important factor at the end of the day.
Yeah, I mean, doing good. Enjoying the off day. Obviously, we had an up-down week, so there's a lot to work on. So just getting ready to practice for the next 4 days.
It's going to be a big one, man. Like you guys, I guess you're still going into the majors favourites, but I wasn't expecting a defeat. The questions were there, like, can this team go undefeated? Not going to happen. It would have been insane if you'd have gone undefeated, but it's pretty impressive making it this far in the season without taking a loss. We'll get into that in the coming minutes. The first thing I wanted to touch on here, also, like the video, if you guys enjoy it, subscribe to the channel. I think we hit like 2,300 subscribers pretty much on YouTube. Phenomenal work. Let's keep that train rolling. And also on Spotify, leave us a review, all that good stuff. You can check it out on all the audio platforms in the description box below. Let's go then. So the first thing that happened was regarding the gentleman's agreement situation on the amateur side. So there was this elite tournament and effectively, the North American amateurs decided to gentleman's agreement, the QBZ, right before everything kicked off in like the finals of their Elite Cup, whatever exactly it was. So the QBZ has been a bit of a question mark weapon, and we might talk about it when we get to the matches as well, because it has been kind of interesting which players have been having success with it and which ones haven't, and not really sure what the meta is going to look like after this stage when the new patch comes in terms of where the QBZ is going to find its slots. But in the European and the APAC challenges, they already GA'd it, said it was too good. It was being used in the North American challenges as well. And right before their tournament, they decide, I think like maybe Parasite was leading the charge from what I could kind of tell from the Twitter stuff, that they wanted the QBZ gone out of the game. However, Standy on New York Sublines Academy wasn't so convinced that this should be the case. And he put up some very stiff resistance, given the fact that, understandably so, you've been scrimming with this for, several weeks now, and right the day of the tournament, they're going to GA it. Seems a bit like BS. Therefore, everything went chaotic. Standy was like, okay, you can put up whatever you want. We were watching scrims a couple of hours before the Elite Series with Thermal XM4s coming out to play, laser sights on them, AK-47s. I'm like, what is going on here? It was certainly an entertaining thing to watch. The smokes didn't make it to the play, it does seem. But eventually, I think they somewhat came to their senses and realised, okay, this is a bit ridiculous, lads. Let's say, okay, you can have the QBZ for this tourney, and it's gone after that. So what do you think about this, Austin? Like, it was a funny one. It's just classic stuff on the challenger side. But I think a lot of people, from the, I guess, viewers' perspective, found this really entertaining. The fact that just all the cards were on the table. And it was chaos, man.
Yeah. Yeah, it was definitely chaos for like those like couple hours before the matches actually started. So I guess what really caused the chaos is the amateurs had like the patch that day. So the patch actually nerfed the AK-74U. And it buffed the Krieg, and the QBZ stayed the same. And so the issue was the SMGs were getting nerfed, and the ARs were actually getting stronger. So they decided that the QBZ needed to go because of the headshot multiplier it has. It's 1.4, which is one of the highest in the game. So they decided that was unfair. It just sucks the timing of the patch, because the patch was 12 hours before the matches started. So it's kind of just unfair for everyone. Obviously, the way GAs are decided are a point of contention for everyone. How the AMs did it was it just shows all the flaws and everything. So I really thought we were going to see some XM4s in the matches. I was kind of excited to see what was going to go down, just because Spart was really keen on using the QBZ, which was weird because he was actually better with the Krieg, but besides the point. So yeah, it was just a really interesting start to the Elite Day.
Absolutely, yeah. It kind of reminds me of in Modern Warfare last year when the whole org situation went down. So like the AUG, I'm pretty sure you guys used it a lot, right? For like a couple of weeks when there was some patch update, and then they decided it was GA'd, but then maybe it was Priest or a Beezy, I kind of forget. But I remember there was some discussion on Twitter the fact that
Reset.
like, yeah, this is outrageous. Like just before the tournament, we've been using this for weeks, and they want to get rid of it. Basically, because you can argue that, well, FaZe were better with it than the other teams because they've been using it. Therefore, the other teams decide, oh well, let's just get rid of that gun, and therefore, we won't be as we won't have as much of a hard time playing against them, right? And I don't think that ever went through. Like the GA still went through because the blacklist card comes out again. But man, like quite the stuff going on right now, Wilston.
Yeah, thank God the CDL allows us to play on the old patches because we don't have these issues, and it gives us 2 weeks to play on the old patch, and then we have a week off where we can play around with the new patch and get used to it. So thank God we don't really have to deal with that anymore.
Yeah, that's a good point, man. The thermal QBZs were just honestly something else. Like he was fine with it, Paul X though. Oh no, it wasn't Paul X. It was a tall gravity, of course. Yeah, he pulled it out and was just going off on the main stage. I don't like once the other get because we used to have thermals. People used to use thermals on their ARs.
Remington,
Was it? Yeah, okay, yeah. Back in Ghost, you had the flip flop one, didn't you? You could like flip into the red dot.
Good.
Oh, it was so good, man. The thermal hybrid. Other people, maybe am I thinking like Infinite Warfare? People used to chuck it on the NV4, maybe.
I feel like it was in a lot of games.
Yeah, I think even Octane would use it on like. Maybe I'm completely tripping. Back in Black Ops 3, you didn't get any aim assist on the thermal on the ICR, but I swear one time he pulled out a thermal on the ICR. People used to use some fun stuff back in the day. It doesn't happen anymore.
The only reason why you don't see the thermals because last year it got GA'd because Cold Blooded didn't work through smokes.
Yeah.
So they had the GA it, and now it just never came back, which is kind of sad.
Yeah, agreed. It used to be my favorite sight back in like Black Ops 2, the dual band DSR. That was like, oh my god, that's god tier gun right there. All right, let's talk about the matches then. So crazy week of games. I mean, every week we're like crazy matches. Here we are again. I think we'll go through like on a team by team basis. So the first match of the week was Dallas versus Florida. Dallas come out with a pretty quick 3-0 here. It was pretty impressive. I don't know if every map was checkmate, but there was a lot of checkmate going on, and they take the series pretty comfortably. Florida, just a strange situation that they find themselves in because in theory this team should be pretty good. They make the roster change for Havoc before the season even begins. Neptune's been very promising. Skies has actually been better lately, but with Skies stepping up, Awakening hasn't had quite the same impact. And Slacked is kind of doing his thing, but in a league this competitive, doing your thing isn't quite enough. So Florida go down 3-0. On the other side of things, you've got Dallas then, who, well, I mean, they do win a search in this matchup, but their search and destroy certainly was a big question mark when we talk about the Chicago match in a few minutes' time here. But I guess let's start with Florida, right? Because then they go on to lose to Paris 3-1 later on. This was a series that if they win this, like they get winners, or they still have a great chance at winners, because that Group E was absolute chaos. Yeah. There were 3 teams at 3-2, 3 teams at 2-3, and that's how it was decided in the end. But I think if Florida got through this, they would at least kept their hopes alive. But it doesn't happen. The Paris victory for Florida at least helps OpTic get over the line as they did in the end. But yeah, what do you do with Florida right now? Because I'm pretty sure they're in losers round 1 again. They play up against they play LAG first round of the major in the losers bracket on the very first day on the Wednesday, which is not really where I was expecting this team to be. So tough spot for these guys.
Yeah, it's definitely a weird spot for them because they're probably the only team I would say they put because they have a lot of talent. It's so weird that they're not coming together. They played checkmate hardpoint twice. This week they lost both of them within like 30 points, 13 to Paris. Both of their ARs went negative in both their series. And like an interesting stat is Awakening had a 0.9 for this stage, and he actually had a 0.68 in S&D. And I think like the team is struggling in like every mode right now. I don't think they have a strong mode where they're confident on, which is kind of like they have like an identity issue. They don't know who is supposed to be. Maybe like it's kind of just all from a third person looking in, but like it's like the ARs are struggling, and I feel like it's kind of like a role clash there. Neptune's actually playing really well, but then like he'll have like some like inconsistencies within the modes, and then like Slacked seems like he's doing his job. And he also seems like he's the easy one to pick on because like he'll have like the lowest KD, but like his role shouldn't be the one to get the highest KD. So it's kind of I don't know. It's a really tough spot for them because like even though they lost both series, they actually had a chance to get winners if Seattle actually closed out their final series of the weekend. And
Yeah. Oh my God.
yeah, so
That didn't happen. Oh.
I feel like this team just they need to get more like they need to have more fundamentals. Like I feel like they're really free flowing. Like a term that is used in other esports is they're really puggy. Like they just kind of just
Mm.
free challenge everything. They just ego challenge a lot of stuff. So I think they just need to tighten up and really decide on who's going to be like that main slayer on the team because I think they're really having that like identity crisis right now with like Awakening and Skies.
Yeah, I agree because that's like that's just something that when you see Sky steps up and Awakening drops off, it really feels like just the way they're playing has not actually helped them, right? They've basically just stayed in the same point. But there were a lot of teams like New York, especially. There were some crazy stats I saw on the Reddit today regarding how they like their stats this stage not pretty at all on the surface, but yet they're actually one of the best teams in the game, like top three. New York, you could certainly argue that. Despite what the stats aren't looking so great, right? So it's weird. I think I agree in the sense that Florida, that the teamwork, the cohesion doesn't necessarily seem to be there in the sense that they're managing to not necessarily drop the greatest numbers, but also they can't actually get over the line in crucial series. And against the Paris match as well, like you look on the other side, and it's kind of course, they did make the role
We'll
changes
switch.
once again. So Fire comes back to the AR, and you've got Scraps now and Classic on the SMGs, which is an interesting one. You're not necessarily expecting them to go off all the time, but Classic has a phenomenal map for, and it's like how often do you get those kind of phenomenal maps out of your non-main slayers on Florida? You don't necessarily, it doesn't necessarily happen, right? So
Yeah.
I just think they find themselves in a weird spot. I do agree with your take though, the fact that they'll probably just end up sticking, which is, I don't know. I mean, I guess they came good last season, kind of halfway through, but that's after they picked up Awakening. So obviously that made a big difference for them. So just kind of strange. I expected this team to be one of the big underdogs going into the season, but they just can't seem to make it work against the top teams. They did, of course, 3-0 OpTic, but that was a special week for those guys. I guess we can touch on Paris as well, real quick, given that was the match that we just looked at. Fire back on the AR looked like so much better. Impressive from Scraps to be able to just fit into that role and put up a great showing, because typically I've always thought of Scraps as being a player who's incredibly good at getting kills, but will not necessarily do the best job at making space for his team necessarily and throwing away his life when it matters. But he put on a show here. Fair play to them. The role switch comes in. Fire looks much better. I mean, we had the discussion last week. Like, I think maybe you did mention, like, you try this role change, and if it doesn't work, then it's time to bring the hammer down. Actually, let me just have a look where they are setting up for the major real quick. So they play Thieves round one. Oh my word. Well,
Yeah.
we'll talk about Thieves in a second there, Austin.
It's really weird because like you talk about Paris and you feel like they've had a really good stage and then they're in losers round one. So it's like, really weird
Yeah, yeah,
because
yeah.
like they actually it does seem
They
like
look
they
good
had a
for a
really
time.
good stage. Like Yuli's been playing really well. Nick had a phenomenal series against Florida. Maddie has been putting up a lot of good numbers and like against Florida we saw a side of him that we really haven't seen. Like you saw that the one that was sliding in first, that was playing the ratty angles, that was opening up space for his teammates. So like team is like really good. I'm kind of shocked they're in losers round one when I look at it, but I actually favor them to kind of make a run in losers because they pair up really nicely against LAT and London. So
I
overall,
think so.
yeah. Overall, I mean, Fire looked a lot more comfortable in the AR. You can tell he's just naturally should be the AR. Maddie played how you want that second SMG to play. Like he played like really smart and intelligently. I think as long as you're getting good numbers out of Yuli and Fire on that second AR, the team should be pretty competitive against almost every team in the league.
Yeah, it's taken them a little bit to find their footing again. And I mean, that group was just so crazy that you kind of feel bad that they're sitting here losers round one. But if there is a matchup you want to have, it's probably LA Thieves. And we should probably touch on them now because, I mean, wow. Of course, they don't have ideal circumstances, right? Like, Kenny, unfortunately, is unwell. I think that the day before their match, there was kind of got leaked on the flank the fact that Kenny was going to be stepping out of the team and Temper's going to be coming in. for at least their matchup against Los Angeles Guerrillas the very next day. So, of course, hope Kenny gets back to form because I think this is gets back to well and also gets back to form because I think this is a really well, it's an unfortunate thing from a fan perspective, but also for Los Angeles Thieves. This really puts them in a tough spot, I think, because they obviously get smoked this series. They've got, I mean, they haven't won a map against Los Angeles Guerrillas this season, right? Because they've got 3-0 by them at the major as well, which is like, you're meant to be the best team in LA by far, and you can't even win a map against the other team. Of course, tough circumstances. Temp comes in last minute. It is what it is. They decided to bring him in over Draz due to the experience. I get it. But at the same time, if you're Los Angeles Thieves, you didn't get to see what the team looked like with Kenny and Venom in that match. Like, if I was Thieves, I would have loved to see, all right, we're playing LAG, a rematch from the major. Like, this is it doesn't matter too much in terms of standings. We're going to be in losers anyway. But at least let's put on a show. Let's win the derby and show that our new team with Kenny and Venom and TJ and Slasher, of course, can actually work. But because they haven't got the opportunity to do that, maybe it puts them in a tough spot in terms of, right, we don't know how good our team with Kenny would have been, and maybe they go into this major. I mean, who knows exactly what they're going to do, but yeah, I clearly, even if Kenny was in this team, it's just not working, guys. Like, it's just, it's probably just time to call it quits. I mean, if you had to do power rankings right now, where are Thieves, man? Like, 11th, 12th, probably 12th? Yeah. Jeez, I mean, that's so crazy to think about, right, Austin? I mean, another shocker.
They're abysmal. Like, they're abysmal statistically. Like, they have the 3 worst KDs in the entire league. Venom is the worst, followed by TJ or Temp, then TJ. None of their players are positive in any mode. So they have 5 players. All 5 of them are negative in every single mode. There is no mode where they are, strong. There's not really too many positives to say about the team. It's kind of like this team is such high expectations that if you aren't in the top half of the league, because would you pick them to beat Atlanta, Dallas, Chicago, New York, Minnesota? Like, I don't think you're going to pick them over any of those guys. Yeah. So it's like, as a team with that high expectations, I just don't think that the lifespan is going to be that long. Like, they're not going to be given the space that, let's say, like Paris, who doesn't have the same high expectations, would have. Sure. So, it's tough. It's a really tough situation. The league is really cutthroat with 12 teams. I'm not going to tell them to like restart or do anything because that's just not my spot. Obviously, they know what they're doing over there, but they're in a tough spot. I don't know what you keep, what you cut. I don't know what you give like time wise. Do you just give them the major? Or do you give them longer if they have life? I can't tell. Like, I would have thought Venom would have came in and fried right away. He's really struggling. And I don't know if that's because of the system. I don't know if that's just because lack of practice with the team. I don't. It's so many questions, and it's just so many red flags that you just see everywhere.
I just think it just shows that the core of that team is just like, it's just done. Like, you look at Minnesota, Standy comes in, he's flying out of control. The team has either adapted themselves or the culture is designed in such a way that enables him to do that. Like, I don't know, maybe Standy, when it comes to actually big matches, he's much better player than Venom is. But I think that if Venom would have slotted into Minnesota, he'd probably be putting up numbers as well. I just think it shows that for whatever reason, what's going on with this team, they're either not gearing it around to try and make Venom do anything decent,
make them better,
or yeah, like are they actually trying to help them improve, or is it just like, all right, let's just slot him into the same old system which has been failing us for the last 2 years? So yeah, I agree with you. I don't know what you even do with this team. I don't know. If I was them, I guess I'd give them the major, but even then, like, what's the point? The thing is, you don't even know, because if Kenny comes back, if Temp's still in, I mean, you got the whole question with like, okay, they've got Draza on the sub bench already. Now we've got Venom in, we've got Kenny, we've got Temp. Like, we've got so many names. Who else can we bring in? Do we have enough room? Yeah, I mean, they play Paris. If they win that, they play London.
You do have a bunch of good pieces. I will say that. Like, you have 6 players that are very talented. Like, even though they're not performing well, like, they're still really talented players. Like, I think Temp is one of the best. He should be an AR in this game, honestly. He's really good. Mm-hmm. Slasher is obviously Slasher. Even like who's their Draza. Even their sub player has been really good in the AM scene. So worst case, they have lots of players that they could trade. I mean, these players are not
Yeah.
bad players. It's not like they have zero stock. And I know their coaching staff of Brandon and JCap and their GM of Eric Mudog is like they're an awesome trio. They know what they're doing over there. So there is a lot of positives to look at this. It's not just all negatives, which is a very good thing. You don't want to be trapped, kind of like how like Seattle was last year. So like
Oh,
you do
God.
have ways to course correct, very quickly. I will say that.
I think they'll figure it out. Like I can see this team in like let's say 2 seasons time being like a real top contender. But I think they've got to make some serious decisions as to what their identity is going forwards. Who you cut, who you keep. Like I don't know. I'm a bit of a Slasher fanboy. I want to have him still as being the core of the team, but can I justify it at the moment? It's tough to say, given the fact that maybe not everything is going to be on land next season. Still brings a question mark. So, man, I don't know. We'll have to see what decisions they make, but they're obviously in a better position than us to make good ones, and hopefully they do, because we want the league to be more competitive than it already is. And if Thieves all of a sudden become good, then we have certainly some fireworks on the main stage, that's for certain. So let's go back to the Thursday. Seattle played OpTic. This was a huge series for OpTic, of course, because they're coming off one of the worst weeks in those players' history, probably. I mean, getting 3-0 by Minnesota and then by Florida Mutineers, not something that happens every day. They come in here, they have to get the job done. They do so in style. It wasn't the most unbelievably convincing series in the world, and I was really intrigued. I would have really kind of liked to see what happened if OpTic lost map 1 here, because map 1 was super close. It was on raid. There were some mistakes either side. Envoy, I think, went massive right towards the end of the game 1. And like it was very reminiscent of when they played Florida game 1 and Awakening 1 on that like 8 streak, and they closed out the map that time. This time it was basically exactly the same game, but Seattle didn't have that crazy piece that got them over the line. So OpTic win map 1 like 250 to 220 or something. And 250 to 230, it was kind of close. And they did a great job clutching up at that P5. And once they won that, you really felt like, all right, like that's the momentum they needed. They're going to roll through the series. But which is effectively what happened. But if they'd have lost that, I would have been really intrigued to see what happened. Like, what would their composure have been like, having just done a very similar thing against Florida the previous week, right? But they do get through it. They 3-0 Seattle. Great result, much needed for them. Gives themselves obviously a great chance to get through still to the winners bracket. On the Seattle side, we'll talk more about Chicago in a second. They had a rough one. I mean, 3-0 here. This was their chance to get winners after looking so much improved. And then the Minnesota series was the absolute dagger, like up 2-0. You won a couple of maps that were, to and fro, certainly. I mean, just that game 5 was just something to behold, Austin.
Yeah, so I guess I'll touch on Seattle first, because I feel like they're the easier one to kind of pinpoint some stuff on. I definitely feel like they should have won that map 1 versus Chicago. If you go back and look, there was like one play that like still sticks out in my head. It's when Envoy was one shot in kitchen, and Dan Looney was right around the corner in P5, and he just never peeked him. If he cleaned up Envoy, that eliminates one of the angles, so it would have been only 2 different angles they would have been pinched on instead of 3. And I think Seattle probably would have wrapped that up. It was obviously a lot more things other than that, just one play, but that was one that just stuck out to me. But then the one against Minnesota was like heartbreaking, because not only did they absolutely crumble under the pressure, it seemed like, they also kind of like screwed Florida at the same time, because if they won that, Florida was in winner's bracket. And Seattle looked so good the first 2 maps, and then you just see like this crumble, just like and it felt like it was just snowballing. It was really weird, because like, and I don't know really what's going wrong, because you're actually getting very good numbers out of Pristini. You're getting like respectable numbers out of Looney. It's not like he's doing bad. Even against Minnesota, he hit a 0.85, which if you're losing 2 respawns and 3 maps, him having a 0.85 is actually pretty decent. But you're not really getting the numbers out of your ARs. So it's just finding the consistency between Gunless and Octane that just hasn't been there, because that would really put them over the top. Like even in this Minnesota series, as I'm looking at it, in 5 maps, Octane only went 65 and 39 and 65 and 69. So he had what 130 for engagements over 5 maps. It just seems like really low when you compare it to Standy, who went 95 and 92. So there is a lot of red flags with like the pacing and like some of the ARs not being consistent. So I don't know. I feel like it's just something they have to really figure out, because if they can figure out that dynamic between their SMGs and ARs, like they are going to really rocket up the power rankings.
Yeah, that's the thing. Like the previous week where they did well, it was Octane and Gunners really came to play, and Pristine and Looney held their own. This week you got really like a really great week out of Pristini, right? Which isn't going to happen all that often. Like he's certainly a great player, and he really proved why he can successfully do that fast entry, gun them down SMG role, like Slayer SMG, that they need him to be on this team. And he proved that he can do it. And he had a couple of series where, I mean, the first couple of maps against Minnesota was going off, and then it started to spiral out of control, right? But even with him having those great couple of series, which, as you say, the question really is always with this team is the consistency. The fact that they didn't manage to close this out is just a tough one. I was thinking Gunners might have a great week here. Doesn't really happen. Several mistakes on the side of those guys, but to Minnesota's credit, they clutch up big time. A couple of rounds in that game 5 versus Seattle, like really were the difference maker. The 1v2 that Attach got, the accuracy 1v3 was just outrageous. Like it's tough to comprehend exactly how that managed to go wrong. I mean, fair play, like accuracy and Attach both taking advantage of mistakes, but the Attachment also stands out because he shot in the middle of the street. They should have known he was there. Frassini hops on top of the A building, even though, like, surely you could know that he's hitting that angle. And then Gunless is left in a 1v1 and he's like trying to regain health behind the wall. It's like all the plays are questionable. And then to get 1v3 just after that as well, it was like, all right, this is just chalked. And man, that was your chance. Complete crumble. I mean, who do they get play at the major here? Let's have a look real quick. They get a bye in the losers. They'll play the winner of LAG versus Mutineers. Either way, not ideal. Could have been so much of a better stage for them. I was really kind of hoping that they'd make it out top 6 and make a bit of a run. But they're still competitive. They can still take a team game 5. Minnesota are no joke. But
yeah, definitely.
Just a tough spot.
It's just disappointing. Like still. Yeah. Because they should have won this. They should have been in winners probably. I guess even if they did win the Minnesota game, they were still in losers. But it's just, when are they going to arrive? Like they keep like giving us this taste of really high caliber gameplay, and then it's like the next day it's not there, and then the day after that it's there and they look phenomenal, and then the day after it's like so close. So I'm just waiting for the day where we get like a whole stage of like scary Seattle, where like they are all on the same page, all doing really well. I just think like their ARs just have to link up better with their SMGs, move a little bit faster. Their SMGs just keep doing what they're doing, and they'll get there. It's just maybe just one more stage, and they'll be there.
Yeah, I'd like to see it. I don't know how confident I am, but maybe I'm just reading into this loss too much. But it was a tough one. I guess on the other side of things, let's talk about Minnesota, given they only played the one game this week. They managed to, well, first of all, this victory here secured OpTic the top 3 spot for the winners bracket. So that was incredibly clutch for Minnesota. The fact that Paris won and Minnesota won effectively made that even if OpTic lost, there would have been a 4-way tiebreak in Group B at 2 and 3 apiece. And then the way it works, the tiebreakers we eventually figured out, is that they look between all of those 4 teams as to what is the head-to-head between the teams. And then OpTic would have been 2 and 1 in the head-to-head because they beat Seattle and they beat Paris. And the other team that had been 2 and 1 was Seattle because they beat Paris and Florida. And then it then goes to the head-to-head between those 2 teams, which OpTic won by beating Seattle. So OpTic would have made it out of the 4-way 2 and 3 tiebreaker if that's what happened, based on these results. Bit of a tangent. But Minnesota, they're still alive on this undefeated run with their new team. They go 0-2. They come in, Standy comes in, take down Dallas in a game 5, beat out OpTic in a 3-0, and now they take down Seattle as well. So honestly, everything seems to be clicking. Standy's playing phenomenal. They've got accuracy clutching up. They've got Attach, making plays, doing what he does, and Priester has been so much better. It's so good to watch Priester actually play well because he's such a great player to watch when he's on form. And the fact that he is on form is very scary. And I'm sure you're sitting there, Austin, thinking, oh, Dan Priester's gonna come and get us at this major if he gets the chance.
I'm just happy he's back in form because it was kind of like it wasn't even it was just a lot of pacing issues. But like now that he's finally back, it just makes me happy that he's finally clicking. And I kind of said this last week that I kind of maybe it should have been like a different switch that we saw, but they kind of proved everyone wrong. They came out and they looked solid for 2 consecutive weeks now. They're 3-0. They've beat probably the other top 3 teams in their pool, I think. They did. They beat Chicago, Dallas, and Seattle, who finished second, third, and fourth. So they showed really good consistency. They keep getting better game to game. They just need to keep developing their map pools. I know they've played a lot of these same maps from series to series, so just expand their map pool, and they'll be a really dangerous threat for any team that they come up against. I don't think anyone wants to play them right now, especially in like the extended honeymoon phase we're seeing.
Absolutely. There's no chance you want to play these lads. Like, if you go game 5 with Minnesota, it's like, boys, all right, here we go. And
we're in trouble.
In fairness, like you're looking at this major, right? And I'll have a look at the bracket real quick here. So because they came number 1, like if you'd have told me they're down 0-2, they're about to make a change and they're going to be number 1 seed in that group, I'd have told you you're mental. But they make it work. They'll be playing the winner of New York or Empire in the first round. We'll talk about those 2 teams here in just a second. And if they win that, then they'll play the winner of FaZe, OpTic, or Ultra. And like you're looking right now at this format and you're saying, okay, Search and Destroy is probably the most crucial game mode because if you're going to go into a best of 9 grand finals, you're probably going to be playing FaZe. There's a very good chance. And therefore, you've got to at least go 2-2 against FaZe in the searches or something if you want to win that. And there's not many teams right now that I can see doing that. But I think Minnesota have a decent shout. And especially given their respawn's good, they're a really scary team, man. They're probably one of the last teams you want to play. Because, you're kind of expected to win when you play them almost if you're some of the real top teams. But, you don't exactly want to get into a mixy one with them. Game 5, round 11 attaches in a 1v1 against you. It's all over.
Yeah, definitely. I think Minnesota's probably number 5 right now for me on my power ranking if I had to do them. But they're like on the same tier as like the other 5. Like they're really solid. They really surprised me like how well they look for the past 2 weeks now. So it's only up from here, hopefully.
Agreed. Yeah. Okay, so let's go down to the Friday games. We had Toronto versus London. And this is another really interesting series to me, like a complete European battle apart from Porlex on the London side. And London looked so good in week 2. Like they really turned up. Maybe just LA Thieves were just tragic, which I imagine they were. But London looked a lot better. Toronto come in here and just pretty much bowl them over. Like it was a very impressive series from them. They didn't really look back. Of course, there was a whole Cammy drama that went down the previous day, and he was absolutely on fire this series. He had like 70 kills and 40 deaths. And like the next player in the lobby had like 48 kills or something. Like he had 20 plus more kills than the next player in the lobby. He just had an absolute monster series. And London looked nowhere near what we'd seen from them before. Of course, a couple of days later, they play the monster that was Atlanta FaZe after their defeat. We'll discuss in a second. Then Toronto go on to play New York a couple of days later. They fall down in that in a 3-1. Really tight fall to fair. Honestly, it probably should have gone game 5. New York I don't know how they managed to clutch up that checkmate hard point. Like, honestly, one of the most ridiculous things I've seen. I think there's so many teams in New York's shoes right there that are like, it's chalked. Because I thought it was watching. I was like, they've got broken. They've lost the hill. They're spawning out. It's like 240 to 244. Toronto need like 10 seconds to win. I think so many teams right there would have just shut it down and said, and at least mentally in the back of their minds would have thought, okay, this is over. Even if they go for the kills, are they super invested? But New York just clutched up, and we can discuss them in a second. Toronto go down, but they still make it to winners. So fair play. They actually had a pretty good stage on the whole. But still, they play OpTic round 1. I'm not convinced they're going to make a crazy run, but if you look at it and you say what's the most surprising team to come out into the winners bracket, we've got FaZe, Chicago, Rocker, New York, and Empire, and then we've got Toronto Ultra. So credit where credit's due. They had a good stage, and maybe they can make a run here. Who knows? Definitely not necessarily the team you want to face when Cammy's on form, especially.
Yeah, I mean, so this Toronto team is like a bit of a mystery for me still. They only beat London and LAG this stage. They kind of scraped by 2-3 to make it in the winners. So it's just kind of like they have to prove it. Yeah, they kind of just have to
that's
prove
fair.
it.
That's fair.
Like they lost to New York, LA, and Atlanta, which are the top 3 teams, I think. Or no,
Interesting.
they lost to the 2 of the top teams in the group. So it's kind of like they have to prove it eventually. I like they haven't had any like standout performances against the top team yet this year. I think I'm pretty sure like they've lost to pretty much everyone that was favored against them. Their SMG still, I have so many questions about it. Like one day Kleenex looks amazing, the next day he looks kind of like he's moving too fast for the team. Maybe I don't know. Cammy, one day he puts up a 1.67, and then the next day he puts up against New York, he puts up a 0.96. So it's just like they just have to find consistency. Again, this is like the running theme, I guess. They just have to find consistency against the best teams because they show this really high potential against the lower teams, and then when they play like the top dogs, they aren't hitting on all cylinders. And I also feel like they kind of stumble when the game gets close. I don't know about you, but I feel like every time the game gets kind of close, like that checkmate hard point, or there was a Garrison again, I think against us, where like as soon as it gets close, I just feel like there's a lot of stakes that get made, and then they compound into New York winning a checkmate where they had no business winning. I don't know if you feel the same way.
Yeah, I agree with you. I mean, those are maps that you just can't afford not to close out, and the top teams are going to take them away from you. And as you say, the consistency point is an interesting one, certainly, because a lot of, like, you look at FaZe, you look at New York especially, even you look at Empire, like Empire's pretty consistent across all the modes. You know what you're going to get from them in hardpoint. You know you're going to get some pretty poor search and destroy, and you know you're going to get some, some solid control at times. But those 3 teams, especially FaZe, New York, and Empire, they come in series to series. You kind of know what you're going to get. Toronto, super up and down. The SMG line is a big question mark. I don't ever trust them to win a game 5 either. Like if Toronto go game 5 against a good team, like I'm gonna say they're losing like 90% of the time. I just like for some reason Bance has an affinity to go in like 4 in 10 in game 5s. Not to call him out specifically, but I've just seen it happen a number of times now that it feels inevitable, unfortunately.
I will say this.
As you say,
Toby, like Kleenex and Insight looked really good for the majority of the stage. Like Kleenex had 2 games where he had a 1.2. He only had 1 game where he had a 0.6, and then the rest were pretty good. So definitely a lot of positives.
Yeah, you're good. Yeah, I agree. Clinics is when he's on form, he's really on form. Like I think he's actually such an underrated talent. But he's not always there. But when he's on, like I don't think people necessarily give him enough credit. The numbers that he can drop when he has a good map is up there with some of the best SMGs in the game, to be honest. So
key piece of their success. That's why I'm so harsh on him, because like he has such a high potential that when he does good, I'm just like, that is the Kleenex that we just need to see every time. Like the series against London and LAT, if you go back and rewatch, anyone that wants to, that's like his potential. And then you go and watch the LAG and the Atlanta series, and it's like, if he could just translate that to those series, this team would be like pretty much winning, double the games they should be that they did. So I don't know. It's just getting him on the same page as Ben and Cammy, because I think Insight's doing his job in the back line. He's doing great. So just getting that trio on the front line, working together as a unit, and they'll get scary.
Agreed. So the other match of that day, interesting one. Atlanta versus Los Angeles Guerrillas. Wow. Really, this series reminded me an awful lot of the series you guys played against Paris last stage, when you really should have lost against a team that you should have beaten. That series you got through it because Simclash that crazy 1v3 on the raid, search and destroy. this time it's very different. What was really interesting to me is that like LAG clearly came super prepared. I mean, they played the series exactly how they wanted to. Like game number one, it was on Moscow. You guys won, pretty convincing. Game two, Miami Search, like LAG just came with the playbook, I suppose. Bowled you guys over 6-2. Wasn't expecting that. That it was a checkmate control. I remember as well that it really was individual brilliance that allowed FaZe to win that. Like there was a few moments that Simp had where he just pop a three piece. That if he doesn't do that, LAG probably win that one. Then they win the hard point as well. And then game five, Search and Destroy. This is where it was like it wasn't necessarily impressive on LAG side, but I think this is where you really saw that Atlanta weren't playing their A game because like this Express was just it wasn't like the phase that you're used to seeing. It wasn't the either up in your face aggression and trades phase or the like we'll play a slow round and get first blood and just crowd you out phase. It was the phase where you get first blooded, don't trade it, try and get completely out rotated by LAG every single round, and get 6-0'd in phenomenal fashion. So I'm sure you'll have some words to say on this. It was I'm sure a wake up call for you guys. Clearly you came up with the fire a couple of days later. I would probably say this is like one of the best series you guys could possibly have lost in that it didn't matter too much and it was the perfect time to lose because if you could come into the major thinking we haven't lost the series yet, we're going to absolutely smoke everyone, and come in maybe a little bit underprepared for some of the key matchups. This one shows it's possible for anyone to win. If we run this series back 100 times, I'm expecting LAG to maybe win like 20, 25 of those times or something. But, credit to them. Silly was phenomenal, super prepared. And, well, credit where credit is due. They took advantage of an underwhelming phase.
So, I mean, to start off, like, everyone has to kind of remember that these are basically just extended pool play. So, not every, like, it's kind of like every series still means something. So, it's not like we actually watched like 3 hours of VOD before this match. But, we kind of had like if you go back to stage one against Toronto and against Paris, like Paris was like we were trying out new maps, so that's kind of why that one was close. But like the Toronto series was more like this one, honestly. Where if you go back and watch it, we were playing really sloppy. Like if you go back and watch the raid S&D, like that was just like kind of this like we survived. It wasn't a win. It was more like we just survived it. And if you go back and watch the S&Ds from this match, it was like the same thing. It was just like a lot of solo chows, just like trying to just do too much. And like the win streak honestly had like a negative effect on us, where it wasn't we're gonna blow out everyone. We don't have to prepare. It was we don't want to lose. And then you start like overthinking it, and you're not like that. Express S&D was just that. Literally, you can go back and watch. It was just like we weren't playing to win. We were playing not to lose, and it was just not the game that we play. So like kind of losing that was actually kind of like a relief because now you can just play our game and you're not playing to win to like keep the streak going. If that makes any sense. I know that's probably not what people think, but
I get that. That's a mindset thing.
Yeah,
that's interesting.
It's just you're playing not to lose, and it's so weird because we honestly, I'm gonna say that this 10 out of 10 we should have closed out this series in map 4. And no one would have said anything. It would have just been like, oh, FaZe had a close series. And we would have survived, and it would have been one of those ones where we were watching it back, because like literally we watched it back right after, and we're just like, guys, like this, and everyone was just like we play called it, we said it, and then in the middle of the round we just didn't do it, and it was just like that's just you're not playing to win, you're playing not to lose, and so it was really nice to actually. If there was one series to lose, that was probably the one, because it had no tie-breaking implications, and we still finished first seed, and we kind of can go into the major with something still to prove, because a lot of people were saying that like we're going to be on this downfall now. But if you go back and rewatch the map 4, I feel like I saw it on Reddit. We were up like 150 to 90. There was one play that was made that just kind of just messed up the rest of the game. We had spawns for P2 and P1, and we accidentally flipped them, and we just got put on the back foot and kind of just lost that. And then obviously getting map 5 just went how it did. But yeah.
They went on a crazy run there. It's like 160 points to 1. I haven't seen that in a long time.
It was just a bad day. It was just one of those days where if we survived, no one would have said really anything, and we kind of just, you had a day where LAG came to play.
Yeah. I was preparing the video like before they won the couple of maps, and I wasn't because nothing too interesting happened that day, so I was kind of unsure exactly what to do with it. And I had a tweet saved up from Clay from a few days ago where he was talking about how like you guys were going to be the next dynasty. Well, I was going to talk about that. That was how I was going to phrase the video. If you guys had to close it up 3-1, because it's like, all right, they're undefeated still. Like, it seems like a good time to talk about the whole idea that, all right, can you guys possibly go undefeated? So, I completely agree that if you'd have snuck through that game 4, then they'd have, no one would have even batted an eye, really. That you just lost a search and destroy in surprising fashion. So, and even more perfect time to lose because you had a match a few days later against London on the Sunday. And I mean, I did feel kind of bad for London here because you really felt like they were going to get put in the absolute blender because FaZe were just not slowing down. The KDs for this series are something that I have rarely seen. I mean, pretty sure everyone has like a 1.2 plus on FaZe, maybe like a 1.15 plus.
3 plus.
1.3 plus. Okay, there you go. I mean, Arstee's went on like a 14 streak game 1. There was more kills than Dylan got in the entire map. He went 13 and 34 in a hard points. That's rough. And the search and destroy, to be fair, London won a couple of rounds early on. You guys came back big time. Simp made a crazy play. There's not many players in the world that can consistently take over games like Simp can. And then the game 3 was just a complete bloodbath as well. One of the quickest series I've seen. You guys completely came out with the fire. But on the London side, you got to ask, right? Like, Zed comes into the squad. We've seen Zed and Dylan put on a show and be solid players. This really was their series. There was still something on the line here, right? Like, if they'd have won this, I was pretty sure they still get top 3. So it was still, it still mattered what they performed like this series. And then all the guys come in and just do nothing, right? Like, this is your chance. When you play FaZe, this is where you prove like what you're made of, right? And Los Angeles Guerrillas did it. Silly did it, especially with a great performance. And this is a series where you're like, all right, I'm playing Simba and Abizi. Here I am, Zed and Dylan. It's time to show that we actually can be a competitive SMG duo with some of the best in the game, which is what you're trying to be if you're London Royal Ravens over the management side of things, and just completely fall flat. And obviously, I know that FaZe was out for blood, but it's just kind of frustrating to see this out of London, they looked so good with this Paul exchange, and the honeymoon is certainly over. They didn't even win a map this week.
Yeah, so I mean, to touch on our side first, this is kind of like what I meant by like we kind of got the winning streak over and we can just play our own game. Like we came out and just weren't afraid to take the challenges as a team, and more importantly, in the S&D, we actually played together as a team instead of just being 4 individuals on a map, which is, when we lose, that's going to be the case. Is this we're not doing what we should be doing. And one thing I haven't also seen is we're 6-1 now, I believe, in hardpoint at this stage, and almost every single one of them has not been close. Besides the
yeah,
like we're actually like that is something that we've like worked on so much that it was just so nice to see us still performing like the fundamentals the way we should be doing it. After like last year, like the whole gimmick was everyone thought we didn't have fundamentals, and then this year, Moscow, Garrison, we were really doing everything that the system requires our players to do, and they're doing it consistently. So it's just really nice. I just wanted to bring that up. But on the London side, I think Dylan and Zed are like 0-8 versus Tyler and Chris. I think it was it's just a bad matchup for that team compared to us. To be fair, I just don't think Dylan's playstyle works when a team can just literally like lock heads with him on that aggression, and I think it kind of doesn't. It just doesn't match up well for him. And this team, the Garrison control was a lot closer than the 3-0 looks. Both their attacking rounds, they performed pretty well and gave themselves a chance to win. The S&D, they had a really good retake, 3v4 retake. So even though it was pretty bad on like the stats side, like there's still some stuff you can walk away with and kind of build off of for the major.
I think that's true, but at the same time, like as you say, these guys never match up well against FaZe. I mean, United, of course, back in Black Ops 3 when that was a thing. And that's a question, right? Like if I'm London Royal Ravens, general manager, and I'm like, every time we play FaZe, we're going to get absolutely bodied. Like, is that something I can accept, right? If FaZe are going to be one of the best teams in the game for the next several years, do I want to be winning championships if I'm London? Do I want to just be trying to compete for top four and beating teams that, I can just about get past? I mean, they came top four at champs last year, so fair play. But, look at this team, and I don't know. I don't know if it's the solution. We'll have to see. I mean, let's have a look at the bracket real quick. They, of course, play the winner of Paris Legion versus the Los Angeles Thieves. Whoever wins that will get the job done. So I'm pretty sure we've been through all the teams now. So I think it's probably time to talk about predictions, expectations for the major. We've missed a big one. Of course, I just looked at the list. I knew we were missing something. And what a series to miss. The photo final series, Dallas, Chicago. We didn't get into quite Dallas's search and destroy issues. What a series. 100,000 plus viewers, I think, in the end. Super back and forth. I mean, game one, Dallas were in a big lead. Chicago come back, just about throw it away. And this was really where I was super impressed from OpTic, was that I said earlier, if they'd have lost game one to Seattle, what happens? But having got that victory out the way and felt like they were back on form, it was really impressive to me, because occasionally you're going to lose game one to Dallas, Atlanta, some of the best teams in the game. It's going to happen. Can you rebound in game two? Like, that is one of the most important things a championship team's going to be able to do. They do so emphatically here in the on the map number 2. Then the control comes around. I think it was it Moscow search or whatever it was. Oh no, it was Moscow game 1. Was it game 2 search? Raid. Yeah, it's raid search. So with the raid search, then it's triple checkmate, baby. The time's come. Probably the best map of control I think I've ever seen. This is just absolutely incredible. The final round of that control, when Dallas have the 4v3 and they're kind of playing to like wait for OpTic, it was so tense. Like, I think it was a great play. Comes down to the 1 versus 1. I'll leave the floor to you to kind of pick that, but just make a quick point. Was that okay? Fair play to OpTic. Scump went mental last couple of maps after that tough 1v1 loss, but this is not the way that you want to lose a series to OpTic if you're Dallas. If you're Dallas, you're going to lose to OpTic occasionally. You want to lose the series by taking, a respawn and a search and losing either a couple of respawns and a search or something like that. You want to lose the respawns if you're Dallas. You cannot afford to lose a series to OpTic where you win 2 very close respawns, which could have gone the other way, get blown out on, well, pretty much all the other maps, right? And especially the search and destroys, because if you run this series 100 times, OpTic are going to win the respawns more often than they won them here. And if you can't win a search to save your life, you're not going to win this series very often at all. So surprising how poor they continue to be in search, to be honest. They look very lost at times. The trio on that team is not playing, I don't know, they're not playing so coherently. Feels like, I don't know, I'm not really sure how to explain it, but they got bowled over in search.
Yeah, definitely. They went 1 and 2 this week in S&D, but that is definitely one of their modes that it's just like, wow, they are really not great on. And they even, so going into this week, they were something like 9 and 27 in opening duels between Hook and Shotzi. And they actually improved on that going into this week. They are now 16 and 23. So they did better. But the problem is the team actually did worse than S&D, which is pretty wild to me. So, the team on paper should be good at S&D. I don't understand where the woes are coming from. They should be able to, win 2 respawns like that and close it out. I just still can't believe that it should have maybe almost been 5-0 Chicago.
Legit.
It's just so crazy to me that they were struggling as bad as they did. And like on the other side, Chicago now goes 3-0 in S&D, looked phenomenal in it. They did have a couple of like red flags to me, like Scump going into the game had like one of the lowest KDs in the league. He really struggled against Minnesota and Seattle, but like when the chips were on the table, he really lit it up and had a 1.17 against Dallas. It was definitely his like comeback performance of the stage. But the other red flag is I feel like sometimes Chicago is relying on checkmate in all the modes. I don't know if you feel like that. I feel like every series we
Agreed.
watch of Chicago, it's a lot of raid and hardpoint and checkmate, checkmate, checkmate. So I'm curious to see how their map pool is besides, those four maps. We're going to see that in the major, obviously, but it's definitely something that I want to see them, expand and like show that off because I feel like almost every series we get a checkmate, checkmate, checkmate with them.
Exactly, yeah. You could feel it coming, right, with OpTic versus Empire. That's how I wanted to go. If they play New York, it probably would be a similar thing. But playing you guys is a different story, right? Because Checkmate's going to be out, I can only assume. I mean, I'm pretty sure everyone's probably going to ban Checkmate Hardpoint against OpTic at this point. So things get a little bit different for them. And yeah, I agree. I was super impressed. I mean, fair play to Scump having the series that he did, especially the last couple of maps. After losing that 1v1, I mean, you could talk about that 1v1 for days. Who should have played it? How should he have played it? He probably misplayed it to a degree. But I mean, Illy obviously made a phenomenal play. And that's the thing, right? Like, you don't win those maps all the time if you're Dallas. You have to find a way to close out this series if we're going to take two respawns of OpTic. The fact that they can't do it does, I think, say a lot about that team. And OpTic now coming to the major in ideally, well, pretty much ideal circumstances in the sense that they've lost a couple of series that they were never expected to. They have a massive bounce back week. Scump seems to be back on form, or like huge turnaround from him. At least, like, if he can put up a 1.0, that team's going to be so deadly because Dashi had a great week. Formal actually wanted to mention something interesting because Dashi was using the QBZ in their defeats in week 2. Then now they've almost switched it in the sense that Dashi's using the Krig, Formal's still using the Krig sometimes, but in Search, he was going inside the plane with a QBZ and doing great things with it. So interesting to see how that kind of, in a sense, like Dashi's almost slipped into that main AR role in certain situations. Obviously in Search roles don't really play as much of a difference. But yeah, like when all the cylinders are firing on that team and Scump's got a 1.0, then they're a really, really deadly team. And I do agree with you, though. I mean, look, if they're going to beat Toronto, they're going to play FaZe, and that series is going to come down to how good they can be in Search and Destroy. And I don't really know if you guys play Checkmate Search either. Checkmate Hyperpoint will probably be out the door. Probably it will be, I don't know, maybe it'll be a Garrison. I don't know who bans. I don't know if OpTic banned Garrison Control.
They banned Garrison Hardpoint.
Yeah, okay, yeah. So, but anyway, we'll have to see how it goes. But the map vetoes are going to look very different for that series than this one. So I wonder if they can replicate it. But it's nice to see OpTic back on form and being a force in the league. And I just wonder if Dallas will be able to make their way back to a grand finals because typically when Crim6 comes to play at a major, like this is really where you get the best form out of Dallas, but they don't find themselves in the best spot here.
I think this series actually proved that New York might be shockingly the number 2 team right now. I don't know if you agree with that, but Chicago obviously had that. Yeah, Chicago obviously had that one bad week. I do think it was just like kind of like an isolated week where they were kind of, I don't know. Ashley was using the QBZ. They kind of maybe had some role switches that proved that they were better this week. But I think New York has consistently been one of those teams that can take maps off of anybody and even though their KDs and like their statistics are all literally in the middle of the pack, they have their best KD on the team is Asim with a 1.01. They just play such a fundamental game that it doesn't need the high slaying. So it just proves that the league itself has so much parity, but even at the top level, the top like 5-6 teams are actually really close too.
I agree. I mean, yeah, if you're going to pick a number 2 team right now behind FaZe, like New York is probably a very reasonable shout, and it's not something I really expected to say looking at how those two groups stacked up before the stage. But given OpTic had that tough week, you never know if they're liable to have another series like that. Whereas, as I said earlier, New York, you kind of always feel like you know what you're going to get with them. So let's talk about the matches then, because I think that's a perfect segue given that New York play Empire round 1, Clay versus Crim again. And if I have to pick a favourite for this game, like I've probably got to say New York, right? Because in the Search and Destroys, I'm more confident they're going to close it out. I feel like this is the perfect time for Clayster to like really prove that they shouldn't have dropped him, type of thing. Like this is the perfect opportunity for him to show that like like you guys, you're struggling in these game modes that you were good with me last year, especially the search. Here I am with these new guys, knocking you out, or knocking you down to losers at the major. So I just wondered if you wanted to pick out a couple of interesting matchups for the ones that we at least know, because all the predictions could certainly go out
Yeah.
the window.
So that one's definitely my top one because Dallas did 3-0 New York at the last major in the losers finals, but
Mhm.
New York actually matches up really well against Dallas, like map pool wise. They both like checkmate hardpoint. They both like checkmate control. New York, I will give the edge to on the S&Ds, so it's really close. Definitely Dallas is going to have to win out the respawns, I think, if they're going to close this out, unless they really hit the books for the S&D this week. So, and then the round two matchups in the winners bracket is honestly insane. I love these majors so much. Whether it's Toronto or Chicago, whoever we face is going to be like an insane match. And then on the other side, I'm actually really, really, really curious to see how Minnesota does against either New York or Dallas because I feel like all three of them are in the top five. I feel like all three of them match up super well to each other. So I want to see if Minnesota's like the real deal. Like this is like their time to put down one of the best teams in the world and advance to top three. So the winners bracket is just full of so many good storylines.
I agree completely. I mean, you look at the losers side, there's nothing that really stands out because I feel like all of those teams are going to get snuffed out eventually. Even if I can't even really pick a team that I think could make a run. I mean, if LAG keep playing how they're playing, they could maybe make it a few rounds in, but at some point you're going to face one of the big dogs from the winners and you're probably going to get cut down. But yeah, I mean, the winners is going to be insane, man. Like if New York beat that, they play Rocker, then let's say OpTic when they play FaZe. I mean, that's going to be a cracker. And I'm just intrigued, really. Like, who do you think has the best chance of? Like, let's say you guys make it to the grand finals. Who do you think is the most likely team to find their way there to meet you? Because to me, it's quite tough to say. I kind of want to say OpTic just because of the form they hit and the fact that they really have the potential, I think, to run through teams. And I wonder if like people are going to really be heavily studying what Rocker are up to and whether they can quite keep that level going into the major might be a challenge. But I mean, it's only a couple of days away, right? It's not like they're going to cool down, especially.
Mm-hmm.
But yeah, if you're predicting the grand finals right now, who do you think you're going to play?
So it's super tough. Like I don't even want to write our team past anybody, so I'll just say like the team that I expect to make it to the grand finals. I think I might have to go with New York right now. It sounds weird, but
Pick, man.
Dallas obviously has like that major red flag that is appearing in 2 out of 5, like 2 times every series.
Yeah.
Chicago is, I feel like they lost their like way right now, like their mojo, and I feel like they're depending on a couple maps, and like I just need to see them play a couple other ones and show because like I know they're good at them. I just want to see it on the map pool, because the maps that you played at stage 1 don't matter now. It's all stage 2, and so that's a little bit of a red flag for me. And Minnesota, I feel like they're really good, but I feel like New York just matches up really well against them. So if like those two were playing for a spot in the grand finals, like taking us even out of the bracket completely, like if it was New York versus Minnesota in the winners finals, I think I would still go New York, like map 5. Be super
Awesome
close.
series, man.
Yeah.
Yeah, genuinely. I think I said a similar thing in like someone asked me in the comments, who do I think is gonna play FaZe in the finals, and I think I said New York. And I think there's a great chance that happens. I do wonder whether OpTic can put it together for a number of series here because they start winners round 1, then they've got to, if they win that, got to get through you guys, and if they struggle to do that, which I mean, any team in the world's going to struggle to do that, then they're going to be into a losers gauntlet where can they put it together series after series? That is the question because they couldn't do it last major despite looking great at times. They've had this strange week where they completely fall apart. So that's really the thing for OpTic. If they go through the winners, I think they can probably win like 4 series in a row and win the thing. But if they go to losers, I feel like at some point they have a series which slips them up. But a team like New York, that I don't have that concern with them at all. Like I feel like if they go into a series, they could be down 2-0, it's not
You
going
know,
to
the ace
concern
in your
them.
ear.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, he's going to be like, let's do the what's it called, guys?
What's it called?
What's it called? The full sale, of course, and make it happen.
I will
So,
say this though, like OpTic, I have way less of a worry about in map 5 now, whereas before in
that's a
stage
good
1
point.
that was kind of like their red flag. But like their S&D looks amazing. So, and if they 3-0 Toronto, like if they really put their stamp on it, I'm honestly like pretty nervous. Like I'm gonna be nervous either way,
Yeah,
but if they're coming in with like a full head of steam, that's gonna be like that matchup's probably gonna be like the best one of the season. So anyway, it
agreed.
goes
Yeah.
down.
Yeah, because last time you guys played a course, I mean, it was a very tight fought affair in all the maps apart from the searches. So this time, expecting some more fireworks if that game does happen. I certainly hope it does. I mean, everything is aligned here, I think, for a phenomenal major. Kicks off on Wednesday. There's a couple of matches Wednesday. Then on the Thursday, Friday, there's like 4 games, 2 winners games, 2 losers games. Then Saturday, Sunday, absolute bloodbath. Yeah, we're really intrigued to hear your perspective in the comment section below. Who do you think is going to win? Who do you think is going to, well, get there? Who's your dark horse for the weekend that could make a run? I mean, honestly, that is kind of tough to say. Like, who do you actually reckon? I guess New York would be the answer, given we already kind of discussed it. Like the team that, but maybe I'd say Minnesota in the sense that if there's a team that isn't really expected, then again, the number 1 seed, so it's tough to say. But I feel like if Minnesota really keep on their form, then like they actually can win
Minnesota's
this.
an okay choice.
It's
Yeah.
kind of what I said about the search and destroy thing, right? Like if you play FaZe in the grand finals, I don't think there's any team more likely than Minnesota to be able to win enough searches to take a series of FaZe. So that kind of be my pick, but it kind of feels strange to say they're a dark horse given they're their number 1 seed of the group.
I'm really curious to see how the grand finals is because I don't know if it's still the just straight best of 9.
Sure, yeah. Or they did the +1.
Yeah, so
I hope they
I don't
did.
even know how it is, and I
Hmm.
really hope it's a +1.
Yeah, no, you
I really
100%.
do. I would say a dark horse who I think can make a run but not win would be Florida maybe in the losers bracket. I feel like they match up really well against LAG, Seattle. I mean Seattle's really good, but if I wanted to make a dark horse run, I think Florida would be able to because
They
they would
did it
face
last time, didn't they?
Toronto.
I think a little bit in stage
Yeah,
1.
would Toronto fall on the Seattle side?
Um, I can try and find it,
Because then it would
or Omar
be
can bring it up on
LAG,
screen maybe.
Seattle, and then Toronto. So I could see a run like
Certainly
that going to
winnable.
Florida. Yeah, definitely.
Yeah, I agree. I think Florida's a good shout. I think they did something like that last time as well. They managed to make a little bit of a run, which wasn't exactly great. Hang on, if I on the big
They show
screen,
the
I may be able
they
to
show the
find this
potential
here.
so much. They just need to put it all together.
Yeah, exactly. For some reason, it's not loading for me. But yeah, I agree. I think there's a decent chance they managed to make that work. And yeah, there's not really too many other teams down there. I think it's the same thing about Seattle in the sense that they could do something, but I just don't think they're going to be able to do it on a consistent basis. Like even if they win the round 2, they get to round 3. By the time it's like to round 4, you feel like they're gonna find their way out. But still, the league is insanely competitive right now.
Great.
It's been a pleasure, Austin, and we will
Definitely.
catch up again next week. Best of luck on the weekends. Of course, won the first major. This is the time to defend and try and win every single tournament this season. That would be impressive. I don't think it's out of the realms of possibility.
Yeah, it'll be tough, but we're definitely gonna have a lot more, harder matchups this time around. I think so. It's gonna be difficult, but we'll do our best.
Absolutely. Anyway, thanks for watching. Everyone watching at home or listening on Spotify, drop us a review, drop us a like on the video, sub to the YouTube channel if you're watching on YouTube. Thanks for watching as always. Take care of yourselves, and we will see you next time.